There's 1 day of Summer League games left with the Summer League playoffs starting right around the corner on Sunday. But on today's episode, I want to discuss the players that have stood out so far in Summer League. We're also going to talk about teams monitoring what's going on with Trae Young, all that plus more right after this.
When that final buzzer rings, you know it's time for Locked On NBA Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. It's the true NBA fans' one stop for all the action. Every game, every night. It's Locked On NBA Game Night. Tipping off now.
What's going on, everydayers? Welcome to another episode of Locked On NBA Game Night, where we review every game, every night, even in the offseason and for Summer League. My name is Haize, host and one of the hosts of Locked On Bulls. And I want to thank you guys for tuning in, but let's go ahead and get into it for today. I want to start off this episode talking about some of the players that have really stood out so far in NBA Summer League and what that could mean for them going forward, their spots on teams, things like that. We'll look at some of the best rookies, some of the best players overall. And I want to start off with some of the players that have really surprised me and that could be stepping into larger roles in the next year. And I think one of the players that definitely deserves to be talked about is Kyle Filipowski. Now, he played 3 games out of the Utah Jazz's 5 games. He did sit out in the finale as well, but you got to see Kyle Filipowski just, pick up on where he left off on the end of the season. He had a really strong finish to his rookie year, even though it was being up and down at times. But you look at him, 29 points per game so far, in Summer League, 56% shooting from the field and 39% shooting from 3. He also went 62% from the free throw line. Needs to tighten that up a little bit, but 7 assists per game, almost 8, as a matter of fact, 2 assists per game as well, and almost a block per game. Now, Kyle Filipowski is going into a situation with Utah, or coming back into the situation with Utah, where Lauri Markkanen is still there. Walker Kessler's still there. Walker Kessler, a player that's trying to really work on his offensive game. He's already known as a defender. And Filipowski's going to try to find his pathway between those two players that either playing center or playing the power forward. But you can't deny that Filipowski just seemed a lot more poised this year in Summer League. You definitely can see the confidence that he's picking up on from where he left at last season, which is really good for him as well. He's just a player that just seems like he's ready to make that next step, whatever that may be. Now, I don't say that to say that Summer League performance is going to transfer one for one from to the NBA performance, but you do see things in just the processing of the game for Kyle Filipowski that really stands out a lot. And he looks poised to really take that next step for the Utah Jazz. And the Jazz being a team that, we know that their pick is top 8 protected. We know that. So they are a team that's probably going to be tanking and not necessarily looking to win a lot of games next year. But I do think this, especially with Lauri Markkanen, even though the Jazz have come out and said that Lauri Markkanen is not on the market. But even with him there, we know that Walker Kessler, Lauri, these have been 2 players that have been mentioned in trade talks for years at this point. And if Filipowski looks like he's ready to ascend, maybe it makes it a little bit more open to where you move one of those guys. At that point, you have a guy like Ace Bailey, Kyle Filipowski, these young first and second year players that could be ready to really step into larger roles for those teams. I don't really think that's a bad thing at all, but let me know what you guys think of Kyle Filipowski. Another player, to me, that is also ready to step up into a huge role, that's Terrence Shannon Jr. with the Minnesota Timberwolves. Matter of fact, the Minnesota Timberwolves, for what it's worth, have one of the best young cores in Summer League this season. And considering where the Timberwolves are, having young players that are ready to step up are going to be a big thing for that Timberwolves team. Now, Terrence Shannon Jr., with Nickeil Alexander-Walker on his way out of Minnesota, he's not going to be there. It offers a unique opportunity for Terrence Shannon Jr. Not only do they need another on-ball creator at times and somebody who can get a bucket when it's needed, Terrence Shannon also being TSJ, being a player that is older. He was older as a rookie. He's going to, is a little bit further advanced. He should be ready to step up to a larger role, maybe before some of the other players, which could really pay off pretty well for him. So Terrence Shannon Jr., his averages through 3 Summer League games, 29 minutes per game. He scored 22 points, did that on 47% shooting. And one of Terrence Shannon Jr.'s biggest things that he has to work on is the 3-point shot, that being reliable. 38.5% for him from 3-point range. Also got to the free throw line 6 times, hit that in a 94% clip. He got 6 rebounds, 5 assists per game, 1.7 steals per game as well. Now, the turnovers for TSJ, we're thinking a little over 3 turnovers per game. And with that Minnesota Timberwolves team needing a point guard, and needing on-ball creators, we'll see what happens. But TSJ is ready to step into a role that the Timberwolves do need. He's going to have to do it differently. Nickeil Alexander-Walker was known as a 3-and-D player, but defense being his specialty, that's not necessarily where Terrence Shannon Jr. is going to thrive at. But I do think that he's a player that is ready to step into a larger role, albeit differently from what they had. And I think when you have the defense that the Timberwolves looked like they were developing last season, Terrence Shannon Jr. is going to be fine, I think, as a team defender, a functional team defender, but he's definitely not going to be the defender that of course, Nickeil Alexander-Walker is. But he's definitely a player that, to me, over this time, really stood out, for his team, and we'll see what happens. Now, it's going to be looked at as me being a little bit of a homer. And that's fair. You can take that for what you will. But I got to mention Matas Buzelis here. Only 2 games played. But when you look at Matas and the weight that he put on from year 1 to year 2, the fact that he averaged 22 points per game over 2 games only in summer league. But I think he's another guy that's shown that he's ready to take another step up for his team. And we all know the Bulls need it. They need as much talent as possible to stand up because, they're a team that's a little bit rough around the edges. But I think Matas had himself a really solid summer league performance as well. And we'll see what happens there. The other player that I got to talk about, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on my own player. If you guys want to kind of more in-depth analysis on that, go over to Locked On Bulls. I got you covered there. But Cody Williams played all 5 summer league games for the Utah Jazz. He averaged 31 minutes per game, 20 points per game as well, 46% shooting from the field, 34% shooting from 3 for Cody Williams, which is solid enough. And he looks like a player that's just kind of more ready than what he was last season. 4 rebounds, 2 assists per game. The turnovers are still a little bit high at 2, but he did have 2 steals per game. And when the Jazz drafted Cody Williams, they were hoping that he was going to develop into this like 3-and-D type player, right? And, his brother, Jalen Williams, just won an NBA title, which is fine and dandy. But Cody was another player that's rookie season was kind of met, being a little bit up and down. At 20 years old, Cody's going into another year where, we know that in the NBA, you need as many wings as possible. Versatile wings that can do multiple things. That's kind of where it is now in this league. And so Cody Williams has a chance. He got 21 minutes per game last year as a rookie, only 4.6 points per game, but only took 5 shots. Now, I don't know how much more of an offensive workload is going to be on Cody Williams next year, how much more he's really ready and willing to take. But I do know that Cody Williams is a player that's ready to make that second-year step. And being a former lottery pick, he was a top 10 pick in 2024. Even though that was considered a weaker draft, Cody still does have tremendous upside. And so seeing how that grows and develops for him, I think is going to be fun to see and watch. And he's definitely one of the players to look out for. Now, most of the players that we talked about were second-year players here. I want to talk about some of the best rookies so far in Summer League as well. I'm just going to list these guys off pretty quickly. Nick Clifford for the Sacramento Kings. He was one of the most polished rookies that you're going to find in Summer League. 18.5 points per game, 6.5 rebounds, 5 assists per game. And when you look at, he was a breakout as an upperclassman in college, and that was a lot related to his shooting. Now seeing him at the NBA 3-point line and what he can do there, that's a big thing for Nick Clifford. And the Sacramento Kings need as much talent as they can. That's a franchise that's really kind of at a pivot point where they're deciding what their next direction is going to look like, whether that's going to be, them keeping Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan or moving those guys, going younger, trying to gain assets. They got a guy like Domantas Sabonis as well, trying to decide on what they're going to do with him and what his future is going to look like. But Nick Clifford is definitely a guy that's looked really good so far in this one. Of course, I also need to mention Cooper Flagg. We know that he got shut down early, but I think when you look at Coop and how he performed from his first game, where it was a little bit of rough, to that, he had the 3rd highest usage rate in Summer League. And we know that's because the Dallas Mavericks, he's going to be the guy eventually for the Dallas Mavericks. Now, I do think he's coming into a situation with them having the players that they have there already on that roster. He's not going to be thrust into most number 1 overall pick situations where it's going to be, hey, go out there and just do you. He's going to have to learn how to play in an actual system with, actual players on that. And I think that's best for him in the long run, learning how to play with those guys. But he had a really good Summer League as well, even though it was a little bit shorter when it came down to it. But I think Cooper Flagg, you got to see the raw potential there as well. And then a guy that surprised me, at least, not that I thought that he was going to be a bad rookie, but Liam McNeely for the Charlotte Hornets. And this is a team that needs also as much upside as they can possibly get. McNeely played really well when it came down to it. He outplayed Con Knuppel, who was the number 4th overall pick, right? taking 29th, 22 points, 12 rebounds, 6 assists. Right when you look at what he did there, this is a guy that I think he's going to have a really nice career. He's one of those players where I think he has a really high floor, and how high that ceiling is going to be determined by how he takes to the NBA game. But Liam McNeely was one of the most impressive, I think, rookies in the Las Vegas Summer League overall. But that's my thought. Those are the players that, to me, really kind of stood out the most in Summer League so far. You guys can let me know your thoughts on that down below. Next up, we're going to be talking about teams monitoring Trae Young and what his extension could look like with the Atlanta Hawks as the Hawks are deciding on what's going on. We're going to talk about all that. But first, we got to get to a message from Gametime. We've all been there, waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to miss out on the show you've been dying to see. Buying tickets shouldn't be stressful. That's where Gametime comes in. Gametime makes getting concert tickets fast, easy, and affordable. Prices actually drop the closer it gets to showtime. You can save up to 60% with their last-minute deals. Plus, their zone deals pick the best seats in the section for you. No more endless scrolling. You even get a panoramic seat view before you buy, so you know exactly what you're getting. And the best part, the price you see is the price you pay. No hidden fees at all. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON NBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time. All right. Every day is. And thank you guys for tuning in, making Locked On NBA Game Night your first listen every single day. But with that said, let's go ahead and get into the next topic. Apparently, teams are watching and monitoring what's going on with Trae Young. Now, the most likely thought here, right, switching from that to from Summer League to some actual NBA talk, is that Trae Young's probably going to stay. From everything that we've heard, Trae Young's happy in Atlanta. Atlanta's happy with the direction of the team. They've added some really nice young players to that team that are going to help, I think, this team win, and they're going to try to build off of it. Atlanta Hawks were one of the teams that saw the opening in the Eastern Conference and wanted to dive right into that. Trading for Kristaps Porzingis with getting a veteran in there is good to help out there, and they get a defensive player that also could be a lob threat, and if he's healthy, can definitely bring an offensive weapon for you as well. But this one comes from Shams, who says this: executives in Las Vegas are closely watching and monitoring the future and status of Atlanta's Trae Young. He has 2 years left on his deal this upcoming season, but he has a player option for 2026. He can be a free agent next summer. It's going to be much more flush market in free agency coming up. And listen, this is an Atlanta team that has made a ton of moves this offseason. They have a rising young team. They have guys like Jalen Johnson, Zachary Richard, but the Hawks want to see how the team looks. Both Trae and Kristaps are extension eligible. So, the summer of 26 seems like it's a lot of teams that have positioned themselves and have already set themselves up to take advantage of free agents that's there, right? That have the money. Now, for a lot of guys, especially guys that are in win now mode, you need more than just money. You also need a situation that makes sense for them, that is better for them than where they currently are. And Trae, I would not be surprised if he opts out of his contract in 26 with the goal of re-upping with the Atlanta Hawks at more money, get locked in more long-term. But there is always that opportunity. And I think what the Hawks have done here is actually is really smart when you look at it. They've increased and improved their roster. No doubt about that. They needed to do that. And in a season where the Boston Celtics are going to be weaker, the Pacers are not going to be what they were last year at all, with you losing Miles Turner and Tyrese Halliburton being out the entirety of the year. That leaves a void, right? The Milwaukee Bucks have improved as well. We'll see what that happens. You got upcoming teams like the Detroit Pistons, the Orlando Magic, who've made some additions as well to be better. But the Hawks have positioned themselves to really give it their all this season and to see what they can be. They're hoping for some internal growth, of course, from some of their young players, better health, keep Dyson Daniels, Jalen Johnson, who missed, towards the end of last season, get him healthier. You got Asa Newell, who really, I could have put him on my list as one of the players that really had themselves a good summer league. But I think overall, like, if Trae, for any reason, or the Atlanta Hawks for any reason, disappoint after the changes that the Hawks have made this offseason, they leave themselves an out. And of course, that could be trading Trae Young in the last year of his deal. That could be Trey Young if he does decide to leave. Like Trey Young has that opportunity to pivot there. Trey is a player that is polarizing when you talk about it. Some people look at Trey and his numbers and they try to equate it to empty calorie stats. I don't feel that way. Now I do think there's something to a lesser degree that people try to talk about it with, and I understand that aspect of it. But Trey is always the last couple of years led the league in assists or been close to it. And he's a guy that I think this new team that you're building and this youth kind of that you have here, it all really fits Trey. I think you got a guy like Asa Newell, I think is going to benefit off the on-ball creation that Trey Young has. And as the team has gotten better, Trey Young's assist has gone up. You're talking about a player that every year since he's been in the league, his number of assists has gone up every single year. Now, some of it has been more marginal in years than others, but some years it's been a whole extra assist per game. And so I think that Trey has the type of game that is going to be able to adapt into really almost any way you want to build this team. But the Hawks have to keep in the back of their mind too. Like, what if Trey does decide to leave? It's always easier to keep in mind or to think that you're going to keep your guys. But once you get out on that free agent market, once you become a player that is an unrestricted free agent where other teams can make their pitches to you, you start thinking about things a little different. It's always easy to say you want to stay with the team that you have and the team that you're on until your agent starts calling you and telling you how these other teams are ready to wine and dine you. And that's something that they have to look out for. I'm not saying that it's going to be major. I think Trey's just going to stay in Atlanta on this next deal. I don't think you're reaching a point where Trey is going to move on. He's only 26 years old. He's right in the midst of his prime. And it would make sense for Trey to opt out, try to re-up and sign a larger deal, and basically for him to be locked in at that point to a contract that's going to carry him throughout most of his prime at that point, especially if he signs a 5-year deal when he's 27 years old. That's going to take him throughout the most of his prime. And, not to say he can't play years after that. It's not like his game's based hugely off athleticism. But as an undersized player, Trey's been able to put up points. We know that he's a defensive liability, but that is why the Atlanta Hawks have really seemingly made the investment in defense that they have made, not just because of Trey, because you need it overall, but if Trey is going to be a big part of your foundation, if he's going to be the guy that you're building this team around, you have to have things that are going to make the game easier on him and things to kind of overcome his shortcomings. Defense is one of Trey Young's shortcomings. I don't think that's going to be a surprise to the world to hear. We know that. Where everybody knows that that's the thing with Trey. Defense is one of his shortcomings. He's going to be attacked defensively. And so you have to build a roster to where if teams are trying to attack him defensively, what can you do? What help can you get him? What weak side defense can you improve on? Those type of things. But as teams are watching this situation, I think that just makes sense. You don't set yourself up to have capital and to be able to sign free agents without really looking at the possibility of the free agents that are going to be out there. And Trey being one of those possible free agents, you best believe that he's going to be a target by some teams. The moment that Trey Young hits unrestricted free agency, they're going to be teams calling. Now, that doesn't mean that Trey is going to answer those calls. He may never meet with another team if his heart's truly in Atlanta, as Shams points out and as what we hear. But there should be no surprise that teams are monitoring Trey Young's situation, as they should be monitoring every situation around the NBA as far as free agents that could be available in 2026, the summer of 26. This free agency did not necessarily turn out the way that a lot of people thought that it would, because a lot of the guys end up returning to the team, but there was still a lot of movement. You're talking about teams with even more money next season and the possibility of even more movement next season with the depth of the draft and teams moving around that. There are going to be some teams that are willing to give up draft picks to kind of more focus on win now talent. So if you thought this offseason has been crazy, which it has been, best believe it's not done yet. It's not over with yet. You are going to see maybe 2 straight years of just complete and utter calamity. We're going to see a wild offseason, and it was great for content. It's great as a basketball fan to see how teams maneuver themselves and put themselves in a position to improve, and that's what you're really looking at. That's what you're trying to get here if you're a team. So, yeah, teams should be monitoring the situation with Trey Young, because despite his flaws, and there are some pretty big flaws there with Trey Young, despite all of that, Trey Young is still a player that, he's one of the best at what he does in the NBA. Now I do think like you can attack him defensively. He could be a pretty bad link in a defensive chain, but that's up to the team, whatever team he's on, to build around that and to try to overcome that. And I feel like the Hawks have done themselves a really a big plus in building for that this past offseason. But we'll see what the future holds. Let me know down below what you guys think. Does Trey Young stay in Atlanta? Does he opt out? Does he take meetings with other teams? Let me know what you guys think on that down below. Next up, we're going to wrap up the show. We're going to talk about Summer League, the Summer League playoffs, which those 4 teams are already set. But first, we got to get to the message from OpenPhone. If you're running a business, every missed call could be a missed opportunity. Think about it. Last time you had a service emergency, did you wait for a call back? Probably not. That's why you need OpenPhone, the #1 business phone system that streamlines your customer communication and helps you scale, all from an app on your phone or computer. I love that I don't need to carry 2 phones. With OpenPhone, I can manage business calls and text from one app, whether I'm at my desk or on the go. My favorite feature is the shared inbox. Your whole team can jump into any conversation without missing a single beat. Plus, the AI call transcripts and summaries are game changers for staying on top of follow-ups and customer interactions. And right now, OpenPhone is offering my listeners 20% off your first 6 months. Just go to openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. That's OpenPhone.com/LockedOnNBA. And if you're switching from another provider, they'll even port your number for free. OpenPhone, no missed calls, no missed customers. More Locked On Game Night coming up next. All right, everydayers. Last topic of the day before we get up out of here. Thank you guys again, as always, for the support and holding it down for us. The Summer League playoffs have been set. Those are going to go down on Sunday, and we know the teams that are going to be competing in this. And while I get it, it's Summer League. I think for basketball junkies like us, that if you're watching this podcast, you're probably a basketball junkie yourself or close there to it. All basketball is basketball. So you look at the 4 teams that have gotten to this final: the Atlanta Hawks, the Boston Celtics, the Memphis Grizzlies, and the LA Clippers. And these are teams that could very well move forward and start getting to a place of winning this. And I think when you look at the OKC Thunder, the Charlotte Hornets, the Sacramento Kings, and the Minnesota Timberwolves. I misread on that one. And so when you look at these teams, the Thunder have a chance to not only win an NBA Finals, but also Summer League Finals. I think that speaks to the young core that the OKC Thunder, when you look at it, they've been beating teams by a margin of 14.8, which is crazy. And then you also look at the Charlotte Hornets, the Sacramento Kings, the Minnesota Timberwolves. Like, all these teams have really solid young cores. I think when you look at it, it's the OKC Thunder and the Minnesota Timberwolves that really have the best young cores in this, that actually could contribute to their franchises and their goals next year. I think that's what you're looking at when it comes down to it. And so overall, right, when you look at this, which one of these teams have really looked the most like that they can actually do something? Which of these teams look like the question that I have here in watching these is which one of these cores can actually help their team go on playoff runs next year? I like the Hornets core. I like the Thunder's core. Minnesota Timberwolves, I like their young core. I just talked about one of their players being a player that's really been a standout so far in Summer League. But I think it all comes down to the OKC Thunder. And here's why I want to say that. The OKC Thunder are a team that, to me, when people talk about the second tax apron, when people talk about how difficult it is now to have contracts of having multiple players getting paid over $40 million, and how restrictive that can make a team. When you look at the OKC Thunder, to me, they are the one team that's willing, that could be willing to be in that second tax apron and be perfectly fine. Look at the way that the second tax apron restricts teams. No mid-level exception, and you can't trade draft picks out. What are the things that the OKC Thunder have mountains of? Draft picks, which they have multiple first-round picks in each of the next 3 or 4 drafts, I believe. But then the young players. The Thunder may not have to use a mid-level exception for the next 3 years. Between what they have in draft capital and what they have in players that are already on their roster on rookie-scale deals, they are the ones that are set up the best for this. You look, for example, one of the perfect positions that I can look at with the Thunder and say this to. For example, Isaiah Hartenstein, 2 years left on his deal. And very well, the Thunder are probably going to end up losing Isaiah Hartenstein and maybe even Lou Dort. But for Isaiah Hartenstein, you just drafted Thomas Sorber. And Thomas Sorber, a really good defensive center, already with an NBA body, can block shots like no tomorrow. And I think he has more offensive upside than people gave him credit for in his draft process. So you now have 2 years to get Thomas Sorber ready to step into Isaiah Hartenstein's role with Chet already locked in. That's what the Thunder can do here. And that's why when people talk about like the Thunder locking in Jalen Williams, Chet, and Shea to these huge contracts and say, all right, how restrictive is this going to be once those extensions start kicking in, which we still got even a couple of years until they start kicking in. If they even are in the second tax apron at that point, you've already set yourself up to be able to take advantage of the young core and the draft picks that you have here. The Thunder are in such a unique situation and position, and it's not by accident. Sam Presti has looked at all of this. He has foreseen it all. And that's why when you look at where the Thunder are with this young core that is now competing and beating teams by crazy margins, even in the summer league, those are teams that you look at and you say, all right, yeah, the Thunder may have just cracked the cheat code to modern day dynasty, but we'll talk about that more in depth going forward in future episodes, especially when Swiper's back on with me. But that's my time for today, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you want to follow me, you can do so at CEO Haize. You can also check it out, Locked on Bulls, where we drop episodes every single day. But thank you, everydayers, for tuning in. Locked on NBA is part of the feed with Locked on NBA Game Night. Make sure you guys subscribe to that. We are free and available on every podcasting app and platform of your choice, as well as YouTube, the Odyssey app, Amazon Fire TV, Roku TV, Fubo TV. We're everywhere. Anywhere you want us, you can find Locked on NBA Game Night. And we'll see you guys, at least for me, again on Friday. Love you guys. Peace, y'all.